Okay, so today's episode I think is going to be kind of neat, a little bit different. Instead of trying things out on the trail and seeing how it differs, I'm seeing how water changes the taste of the whiskey. So this was actually completely inspired by a Stuff and Whiskey episode a while back. Josh and Aaron are great. I will link that video in the description. But they had already packaged, they always kind of package their samples way ahead of time and then just pick different sample pairs and then find out after they've tried both and made their determinations what it was even in the flight. And what it turned out to be was a Knob Creek single barrel and then the same Knob Creek single barrel with a few drops of water added. So, and you know, in tasting it and going through it, you would not have guessed that that's what it was. But I thought that was really intriguing that it would change it that much. I'm not really the type to add water. It's honestly not something I ever really do. Not that I'm against it or anything, but I don't particularly like the idea of adding different amounts of water willy-nilly. But I want to casually drink my whiskey, so I don't want to have to measure that out. I don't measure out my pours unless I'm doing a flight to begin with. So, but that video made me kind of interested, and so now I wanted to test it out in sort of a more controlled setting. So based on how much they had added, I contacted them and found out what I did was 150 microliters of water into 50 milliliters of whiskey. So that's about 333 times as much whiskey than water. But I'm curious to see if that's enough to cause a difference. It should be pretty similar to what they did. Might have been a slightly lower ratio than what they did. It's funny because I did do like just some quick research about this, and a lot of people, you know, really say that water makes the whiskey better. I even saw one article showing that Booker No believes it can make it better, and that bourbon can withstand up to a 1-to-1 dilution, which seems really crazy to me. I'm doing a 1 to 332 dilution here, basically. So let's get into the noses. They definitely come off quite differently. This one comes off proofier in the hand that has my watch, which is my left, your right, I think. I mean, I still get that nuttiness. This one comes off sharper for sure. This one comes off, a lot of vanilla is coming out actually. Just based on the nose, if I had to guess, I would think the one with the watch on did not have water, and the one in the hand that does not have a watch on does have water. Still smells good. That is yummy. I'm not warmed up is the other thing. I did not have a control bourbon before this. I just kind of wanted to get filming. Whew. So that's that first sip of whiskey for the day, and I'm starting at 120 proof, which is a bit much. That second sip is definitely nicer. Oh, that's good. And it's oily, like you probably can't tell, it's not going to focus on it. But it's kind of coating the glass, which is nice. It's like a sharp nuttiness, but also like a tiny amount of fruit on this one. Whereas this one is just all like vanilla and caramel. And not so much, really I'm not getting nuttiness. I'm only looking for that because I know it's Knob Creek single barrel. So, alright, let's try it. This one doesn't really hit with much sharpness at all. Compared to the first one, well, I kind of sit back and forth with these. I wanted to mention in researching this just a little bit, very quickly, honestly. I did not dig deep. But there's been a few articles. Well, actually, there's a lot of just general articles. But there were a couple that cited this paper that came out in 2017 in, I think it was Scientific Reports. So, which kind of has more casual papers like that, it makes sense. But by two Swedish chemists, and they were kind of curious about this, and they had sort of two ideas of what it might be that causes a change in flavor, because there's certainly a change in flavor, and why a lot feel like it improves the flavor. And this also makes me wonder how that would differ between scotch and bourbon, but let me get to the points. So one of the theories was kind of that the fatty acid esters that are in this, which is also kind of what's affected by chill filtering versus non-chill filtering. So also be interesting to see how water affects that, you know, a non-chill filtered versus a chill filtered, yet another variable. But basically these fatty acid esters have hydrophobic and hydrophilic sides, and so they can basically form little bubbles. So the hydrophilic, they like water, are on the exterior, and then the interior could actually trap, you know, unwanted aromatic chemicals, so flavor chemicals kind of thing. But they kind of found that there's not enough fatty acid esters for that. It's too low of a concentration for that to really be plausible. So the other one was kind of the opposite idea of that actually good aromatic compounds are being released by adding water. And based on their simulations, that seems to be more likely what's true. Ooh, I'm digging this one. I feel like this one just is richer in flavor. It definitely has that spice though. That one's really nice, actually. The one on the right. This is an easy sipper. Well, easier sipper. It still definitely has proof. But I feel like there's much more sweetness coming out. Which makes me wonder, back to their other theory, is that what really might happen is that when you add water, normally the ethanol clusters, especially over a certain proof, so over 59% ABV, the ethanol clusters can be trapping more of these flavor compounds. And so when you add water, that actually disrupts the ethanol clusters and can allow more of these flavor compounds to come to the top and to be released. And that's what they think to be true. Them and a couple of other scientists that were referenced in some of these articles. So, I don't know. I just wanted to know, like, why. If you don't know, I'm a scientist. So if I was truly doing this blind and wasn't already in my head trying to guess which is which and have this kind of initial bias against adding water, which one would I truly choose? I'm going to taste them one more time. Actually, I'll taste in backwards order. Ooh, okay, this one hit me nicely this time. Okay. Now that I've had a few sips, that nuttiness, but it's definitely coming out as more of like a creamy nuttiness as opposed to like a drier, almost peanut shell nuttiness that I can often associate with high proof Knob Creeks, really. This one is really nice. Now for this one. I think I like this one more. Maybe almost like that bit of rye that's in the mash bill is a little bit more present on this, which would be another interesting thing. I know there are flavor chemists out there. Somebody I know who hangs out in the chats a lot is really into the flavor chemistry of everything. Taste and Sensibility is another channel who I know knows a lot about chemistry. They could probably comment on this way better than me. I think it's interesting, but I don't know enough about the chemistry. I'm a biologist. You can tell I find this just interesting. It's a fun experiment to do. You should totally try it. Especially if you don't normally add water. Try it out. If you do normally add water, maybe try out a couple of the same higher proof whiskey, with different amounts of water added. I think it's a very interesting little experiment to do and just kind of a fun way to play with it. Might I recommend recording the exact amounts you add? Just to know. I don't know. It's nice to know. And I'd be curious. There's just so many variables that would be interesting. Also, this has been stored with it, and that's what, I'm repeating myself and avoiding giving you my answer. So my answer is this one. My answer is this one is the one I like more, though I almost got swayed over to this one. This one I like more. So let's find out which one is which. So this one is WO, so that is without water. So it should be, yep, this one is with water, WW. Cool. Okay, so I guess right. Obviously, this was coming into it knowing exactly what was in my glass, as opposed to Stefan Whiskey, who was doing it totally blind, which is such a cool concept of a way to test this out. I mean, truly blind experiments are, going to be the most accurate, without any scientific bias or anything. But this was fun. It makes me a little more curious about adding water to some other. It almost feels sacrilegious, but truly, even the science shows it can, really improve. And it's not like you have to add a ton of water. You can add a tiny amount. Ralphie does this all the time, where he adds a little bit of water and then adds a little bit more throughout the review. So I think it's super common in Scotch, but I think it'd be interesting to play around in bourbon too. Anyways, I hope you found this interesting, and maybe you'll do a little bit of experimentation at home. Thanks so much for joining me on Whiskey Mountains, even though we're not out on a trail today. Comfy at home, but a little bit harder to do these types of controlled experiments out on the trail. Those are kind of different experiments, indoors versus outdoors. So thanks for joining me. Salud. So, yeah. This was good. Do I want to say anything else? Realizing I don't have water. I'm gonna grab some water, super quick. You can see my sweatpants. And based on their simulations, that seems to be cat. I do want to cover my ass and say those experiments that those chemists didn't cover it entirely at all. They're not truly fully accurate. They only looked at a couple of compounds. I think it is much more complex than that. I don't know that it's totally worth our scientific funding to go towards that research, but it is kind of a fun side thing to do that's generally probably not that expensive, but compound analysis can be. And I'm just always curious about what kind of science goes behind the decisions that distilleries make, you know, as far as their releasing of things, versus how much of it is just trying and tasting and based on marketing or whatever kind of thing. There's certainly a good amount of science, and I feel like that would be really interesting to hear more about.